Okay, hello there. This is Garrett Monroe, instructional designer here at Hiram College. I'm in the library, and I am recording to you from our Tech and Trek Center. Today, I want to talk about Apple Teacher Badges. This will be a kind of remote or asynchronous resource for anybody who can't make our weekly happy hour sessions. And hopefully, we'll be doing 5 to 10 minutes, just sort of the high points and an overview of what's happening there, and maybe a kind of inspiration for you and your teaching, or a way to kind of get a sense for what we're up to and what kind of services we could offer you. So if you have any questions or any ideas about how you might want to implement these, or how you could be more involved, or if you have a question about anything at all, just shoot me an email, stop by the library, pick up the phone. I'd love to work with you. So yes, this first week of the semester, we're talking about the Apple Teacher Badges, and we called it a cup of tea as well. I have here my image of green tea, and so the sort of parable that goes with the cup of tea idea comes from sort of an Asian model of thinking about relationship building and thinking about how three cups of tea, if anybody's heard of that book, and the idea is that the first time you share tea with somebody, you're strangers. The second time you have tea, your friends, and the third time your family. And so I think that's sort of true in terms of collaborations. Maybe I'll see you once and we haven't met before. And then I think by the time we've met and collaborated three or so times, a lot of the sort of awkwardness and things start to tumble down, and we get into having some fun and really being productive. So I just encourage you to come out and join us for tea or for whatever else. The evening happy hours, we also have things besides tea. So excellent stuff there. And so just thinking a little bit more about kind of what we're up to using the community of inquiry model you might be familiar with. This is a common model used in higher ed, and thinking about how the course or a class could be centered around sort of important topics of inquiry. And so, of course, as a community, what we're up to in this little part of Hiram is thinking about how technology can transform teaching and learning and how it can really enhance it for the better. And we're also really investigating kind of mindful technology and sort of what are the disadvantages? What is the other side of the coin of technology? What is lost by going to technology? When is it just as effective or more effective to put the tech away? So it's all sort of part and parcel with the tech and trek paradigm. But the other point, besides thinking about three cups of tea and thinking here about social presence, is exactly what we're doing here with creating a little screencast or podcast. And the idea is that if we can't have the kind of physical presence we're after, and the analog here is, of course, an online or flipped classroom, we can create rich media using our iPads, such as a screencast or podcast or whatever else, and students can get a more the content seems more alive and the audience seems more authentic if we can hear a voice or see rich media. People seem more relevant, even if we can't be together because of time constraints, physical constraints. We can still kind of build a meaningful community together. And then we can get at sort of the heart of what we're after here. So just a little more meta thoughts on what we're up to with the screencasting and happy hour. So yeah, Apple Teacher Badges. The Apple Teacher Badge program is really how we designed here at Hiram the first entry point to begin thinking about how you can use the iPads in your teaching and learning. It's an Apple program, and the program consists of these 9 badges. Some of these look pretty familiar, such as Pages, right? It's kind of the Microsoft Word, but for Apple, or iMovie, or GarageBand. We've been talking a lot about podcasting. Then there's some other badges here, such as, hey, how to just use the iPad, the basic tools there, how to be productive with the iPad, how to be creative with the iPad. And so when you enroll in this program, and you do so by simply going to this link here, you'll sign in with your Apple ID, and it will give you some information. It'll give you access to some iBooks, one that goes along with each of these badges. And the way in which you earn these badges, you can complete them in any order you want, is that you complete a series of multiple choice questions. And so there's no sort of project submissions, there's no sort of moderation. It's simply you going through and demonstrating that you understand how to use the iPad or how to use GarageBand. And so one could conceivably just sort of crank through this stuff and guess, or if you already know how to do them, hey, you can save the time of having to demonstrate sort of painstakingly, perhaps for you, easy stuff, and just answer the questions. Um, I was kind of in the middle here when I did my Apple Teacher Badges. When I started here at Hiram, I wasn't a huge Apple person, but I was a tech advocate, and so I used a lot of Google and Windows tools and other tools, and I hadn't used a ton of Apple, and so it was sort of an interesting place for me to start in thinking about um, learning to use Apple with you guys. And about half of these badges were really easy, but in particular, iMovie and GarageBand here took me a bit more time, and I actually had to open up the apps, go through the iBooks, and spend a bit more time producing those. I think it took me about 6 months to really get comfortable with those apps. This, however, was just a kind of a way to get my toes into the water. It's a really gentle, kind of low bar way of beginning to experiment and get a sense for the capabilities of the iPad. And this kind of follows. I'm switching to our SAMR slide here. One of the models we've been talking about in terms of integrating technology into teaching learning, that's SAMR. And so the idea is that a really comfortable place to start with is just substitution. And so this is sort of along this first phase of the model in thinking about just enhancing the learning. And so just a comfortable place is just substituting what you're currently doing as a teacher with technology. So an example here would be using a word processor instead of a handwritten assignment. Now, quickly you're going to find as you begin to learn more about the awesome or some of the useful tools in Pages and Microsoft Word these days is that you can quickly augment the learning, and so you can make things a little different than you could without the technology. For instance, voice to text dictation, comments, annotation, link sharing, all these great tools that Apple Teacher Badges will show you how to use. You'll quickly find you're gaining efficiencies and creating new opportunities just by sort of learning and tinkering there. Now, the deeper you go here, the more time you spend with an application, you might find over the course of months or semesters or years that you're beginning to really go deeper in terms of how you think about um, assigning projects and learning and how you do learning. Or not. Maybe it's just cool to gain efficiencies and get a little more free time or free up more time in class to do things like discussion and feedback. But the model is really sort of a fun way of thinking about how to integrate technology, and what we're doing is really starting here in terms of jumping into the canoe and trying to kind of skim the surface here. So the Apple Teacher Badge program, again, you just follow this link and it'll take you to the website, and you begin going through those iBooks and multiple choice questions to earn your Apple Teacher Badge. And what you do when that happens is you get this great little emblem. Apple folks will email you and say, "Hey, you've achieved the badge. You can add that to your email signature if you'd like. You can stuff it away in a folder, and of course, you can begin to have that kind of conversation with your colleagues here at Hiram, of which 50 or so faculty completed the badges, and about as many staff as well so far. So it's a great place to start. You don't have to do it by any means. It's just a fun little area. I think I've seen people complete the whole program in less than an hour just by sort of going through the tests and learning a couple things. Other folks, it's taken 10 hours or so. And I would suggest sort of choosing one per week and then sort of progressively working on them, and maybe over the course of 8 weeks, completing your badge. And that's sort of a nice way of trickling it through and really sort of processing the content. Of course, if you're just you found sort of what you're after, you found your inspiration, your spark, and you can run with that in the classroom, go ahead and go for it, or go and stop by here, and I'd love to hear about what's going on and how I could support that project. So yeah, shoot us an email. Let us know if there's a meeting you'd like to set up with us. That's what's happening next. You can also check the email thread for our event schedule. Next week we're looking at the actual SAMR model. So we'll be looking at examples of what's been going on at Hiram here and elsewhere in terms of how people have been changing their learning activity design. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, Have a great one.